Red player, when you are ready, grasp your fate in your left hand, chance in your right, and cast your lot with the dice.
Hi there, my name's Jim Lockie and welcome this time to my studio for the second part of this short series about my artwork History of Fate and the game, the Royal Game of Ur. Now last time I gave you quite a long overview of the work, but this time I want to focus in on one element in particular, which is the dice. The dice used in the Royal Game of Ur are unusual. They are unlike modern dice and they look like this. The first thing you'll notice is that they are an unusual shape. They are tetrahedrons. That means a triangle based pyramid, and that's pretty unfamiliar unless of course you might be a player of tabletop RPGs, in which case this is the same shape as a D4. But do not be fooled. The dice in the Royal Game of Ur are not like a D4 in one important way. So a D4 has, a number on each point. So when you roll the dice, you're going to roll anything from 1 to 4, and you have an equal chance of rolling any of those numbers. However, the dice in the Royal Game of Ur, as you can see, have no numbers on them, but what they do have is 1, 2 coloured tips and 1, 2 blank tips. So you roll the dice and one tip will be facing up. Either it will be coloured or it will be blank. If it's got a colour, it's a 1. If it's got no colour, it's a 0. So the dice for the Royal Game of Ur are essentially binary dice. They yield a result of kind of a yes or a no. And you roll 4 of these in the game to find out how many places you can move a piece. Unlike a D4 where you have an equal chance to roll a 1, 2, 3 or a 4, rolling binary dice in this way means that you get different probabilities for different results, and that has interesting kind of strategic value in the game. So for instance, you've got a 50-50 chance of rolling a 2 pretty much. Let's run a scenario. You've just rolled the dice and you've got your number. You've got 2 different pieces you could move. You could move one of your pieces, moving 2 places ahead of your opponent, or you could move perhaps a piece that's already in place and have it be 3 spaces ahead of your opponent. Now, knowing that it's much more likely to roll a 2 than it is a 4, you want to be moving that piece that's going to be less likely to be taken. So rolling a 2 is about a 50-50 chance. Rolling a 4 is 1 in 16. So you're much less likely to roll that really high number. You're also much less likely to roll a 0 and not be able to move at all. It's a really interesting wrinkle in the game that comes entirely from these unique dice. When I was creating a History of Fate, this dice became something of a totem for the game as a whole, in that this idea of there being a strategy to how you used the dice rolls and how you interpreted them and used them in gameplay. But essentially it came down to a random chance of what number comes up. And so it's this nice little microcosm of this idea of the interplay between random chance and fate and our own autonomy and choices in our lives. So for the last part of this video, I want to talk about fabrication. So I've already shown you the dice that we used in our giant scaled version of the game. As you can see, it's soft and squidgy. It's basically a cushion. Now I racked my brains for quite a while I was trying to come up with how to supersize these, because these sharp points, if you make them out of something light, they're going to get crushed, but then if you make it out of a hard material, they're going to be dangerous. Also, if you've ever played D&D or other tabletop games that use polyhedral dice, you'll know that D4 are kind of rubbish. They don't roll very well at all, because of the shape of them. Whatever face falls first, that's going to stay there. It doesn't roll very well. So you fix that in D&D by rolling it around in your hand before you roll it so that you can randomize the number. You can't do that with a giant die. And that's where the idea of making them soft and squishy came from. So these are quite well stuffed, which means they've got a little bit of bounce to them. So when you roll them, they really do roll properly, and they randomize quite well, and they're not going to hurt anyone. So it came out really, really well. Now I've got to mention, when I came up with this idea, I was talking to my mum on the phone about how to do it, and she said, you know what, I'll just knock some of these up for you and send them to you in the post. So thanks Mum for that. She's done a pretty good job. Want to make your own Royal Game of dice at home, you've got a few options. Firstly, you could make one from clay like this that I made, and that's pretty authentic to history. Or you could make one from polymer clay like this, and this is the method I used when I had to make 12 sets for the audience to play before the performance of A History of Fate. Polymer clay can be put in the oven and it becomes very hard and durable, so that's pretty useful. And both of those methods, as I say, there's some kind of authenticity to history, because oftentimes the dice that have been found have been made from clay and dried. However, obviously there is a drawback to that, which is that the fairness of the dice will be skewed, because it's impossible to kind of mold a perfect die with your fingers. And so another option you could do would be to buy some blank D4 from the internet. That's what I did when I made my very first set, and there is a video about the making of that set as well. But however, there is one more historically authentic way of making dice for the Royal Game of which I will show you now. In order to do it yourself, you will need 4 lolly sticks. So another way that people in ancient times made dice for this game was to use sticks with marks on one side and the other side blank. They would throw them all and let them land, and so whatever side was facing up was what you rolled. So it's very similar to the tetrahedron dice, but instead of rolling, you're throwing sticks in the air. And I thought it might be quite fun for us to DIY a set of these right now, so let's get on with it. So in order to make your historically authentic set of dice for the Royal Game of you will need 4 lolly sticks. Now you could buy these from a craft shop, or even better, you could buy yourself some lollies and then recycle the sticks after they've been cleaned. And you're also going to need a soldering iron, and we're going to use this to burn in a design. Obviously you could use a pen, but why use a pen when you can burn something? Now what we're going to do is we're going to mark a design on one side of the stick and leave the other side blank. Now your design can obviously be anything you like, but one significant design is the rosette, which is found on the board for the Royal Game of but it actually was also found in temples and as a motif on all sorts of objects from ancient Mesopotamia, and it had actually a kind of ritual meaning and significance beyond its use in the game, which is that it was seen as a symbol of providence, and so that's quite interesting. So maybe we should do some rosettes, but actually I'm going to do something different. So to start, I'm going to do these in about the middle and do my best to draw a decent triangle. That's not bad. And once your sticks are complete, you can pick them up, give them a shake, throw them down, and we've ended up with a 2 there, a 3. So there you have it, a simple, accurate and historically authentic way to make dice for the Royal Game of which anyone can do at home. 1. So I mentioned that these dice kind of work in an interesting way as a metaphor for that struggle between chance and choice that happens in the life of everyone. And just before we go, I'm going to see if I can get this on camera. On my ring finger there, you may be able to just make out a very faint white tattoo. Now the reason this is on my ring finger, and it is a little tiny roll game of die, is because recently my wife and I celebrated our anniversary, and we were talking about going to buy new wedding rings because if you've seen one of my previous videos, I lost my wedding ring in the canal, and so I've been without a ring for a little while. And I jokingly said to her, oh well, maybe we should go and get rings tattooed because I'll only lose it again, and she kind of ran with that idea, so we spontaneously went and got tattoos. I have no other tattoos, I have no interest in tattoos generally, but if I was going to get a tattoo for anything, it would be to show my commitment to my wife. So we got these tattoos. She's got a different one, but this little white tattoo has the symbol of the dice from the Royal Game of Air to kind of embody that thing of, you know, there was a fair amount of chance in our meeting and getting to know each other, but ultimately it's choice that we are together and stay together. So yeah, there's a lot of meaning in this silly little dice. Okay, bye.